The situation in Cameroon is dominated by the fallout from the recent presidential election, coupled with persistent security crises and significant social and economic pressures. The political crisis contested election results. The most immediate and critical news is the deep political division caused by the October 2025 presidential election. President Paul Biya's eighth term. The Constitutional Council formally declared Paul Biya, the world's oldest serving head of state at 92, the winner with 53.66% of the vote. This extends his rule until he is nearly 100 years old. Biya has been in power since 1982. Widespread rejection and fraud claims. The principal challenger, Issa Chirima Bakery, who received 35.19%, has vehemently rejected the results, calling the process a masquerade and alleging massive fraud, including ballot stuffing and manipulation of results. The crackdown on dissent. Deadly protests. Post-election violence has been lethal. At least 4 people were killed in clashes in the economic capital, Douala, with subsequent reports of at least 2 more deaths in Garoua, Chirima's hometown, allegedly due to security forces firing on civilians. Arrests and intimidation. Hundreds of opposition supporters and activists have been arrested across the country. The government, through the Minister of Territorial Administration, has stated that those arrested would face trial before military tribunals on charges like insurrection. Restricted civil liberties. The government imposed a ban on public gatherings and reports surfaced of internet restrictions in Douala and other cities, limiting the ability of citizens to organize and communicate. 2. Persistent security crises. Cameroon faces 2 major, unrelenting internal conflicts. 1. The Anglophone crisis, the secessionist insurgency. This conflict, rooted in the marginalization of the Anglophone minority in the northwest and southwest regions, continues to be a severe humanitarian and security challenge. Ongoing violence. The armed conflict between government forces and separatists, seeking to create an independent state called Ambazonia, persists. Both sides are accused of human rights abuses against civilians, including killings, kidnappings for ransom, and sexual violence. Disruption of life. Separatist groups have consistently imposed lockdowns, ghost towns, that cripple economic activity and have been used to disrupt national events, including the recent presidential election, where many towns in the Anglophone regions were deserted. Humanitarian toll. The crisis has created a severe humanitarian situation, with an estimated over 638,000 internally displaced persons, IDPs, and at least 1.7 million people in need of humanitarian aid. The ongoing violence and displacement compound vulnerability, particularly affecting women and girls in hard-to-reach areas. 2. The far north insecurity. The northern regions bordering Nigeria remain vulnerable to attacks by the Islamist militant group Boko Haram and its splinter faction, ISWAP. These attacks cause displacement and perpetuate instability in the region. 3. Social and economic context. The political and security crises are unfolding against a backdrop of deep social and economic concerns, particularly among Cameroon's youthful population. The youth gerontocracy divide. Over 70% of Cameroon's roughly 30 million people are under the age of 35. This creates a massive generational gap with the country's leadership, which has been in power for over 4 decades. Anger and frustration over corruption, poverty, and limited opportunity are fueling the pro-change movement and the recent protests. Macroeconomic stability versus social welfare growth projections. The economy is forecasted to experience sustainable growth, with the GDP expected to rise by over 4% in 2025, supported by infrastructure projects and sectors like cocoa. Fiscal discipline. Public debt is projected at a manageable 42% of GDP, and the government is pursuing reforms aimed at modernizing the tax framework and digitalizing public services. The reality for citizens. Despite positive headline figures, a large portion of the population, including a high percentage of young people, works in the informal sector, and a significant number of Cameroonians remain in poverty. The perception that economic benefits have not trickled down beyond the ruling elite remains a major social grievance. 4. International reaction. The international community is keenly observing the post-election developments, especially given the history of political instability in the Central African region. Security concerns. The U.S. Embassy in Cameroon issued a security alert urging its citizens to exercise increased vigilance and avoid large crowds, acknowledging the tensions following the election. Global media focus. The contested nature of the results and the violent government crackdown on protesters have garnered significant global media attention, focusing on the human rights implications and the risk of further instability. Regional instability risk. Analysts have warned that the combination of a widely disputed election result, a heavy-handed security response, and a frustrated youth population could potentially lead the country toward greater instability. The current situation is one of heightened political tension, mass arrests, and loss of life following a disputed election, all of which compound two simultaneous, deadly regional security crises in the Anglophone regions and the far north.